Greetings everyone! So last we left off I had several dozen more cards to review, and I'm pretty much out of time to review them. In expansions past, I tried different ways to communicate my opinions, from hour-long livestream recordings to a literal documentation video. I don't like how either of those turned out, so today I'm doing something different. In the description of this video, you'll find a link to a Google spreadsheet that details each of the cards being released in Rise of Shadows. This thing is not exciting reading material, it's pretty much just a list. But if you're wondering my opinion about a specific card, it's relatively straightforward to check this and see which of my ratings I gave it. If you want to browse or skim through the sheet, it's conveniently color-coded for your viewing pleasure. Cards listed with a blue background are ones that you can safely ignore. Purple describes cards that might see play or might not, depending on the strength of other cards. Red cards are ones that are actually powerful, while light gold and gold cards are exceptionally strong. With that out of the way, we'll spend the rest of the video examining the diamonds, turds, and curiosities in the rough. I'll cover the best cards and the weirdest cards of the set that I haven't touched yet, especially if I had to think hard about what rating that card earned. If I don't mention your favorite card, maybe check the list, and if you disagree with the listing, leave a comment and let me know. Anyways, let's begin. Neutral cards are usually a little on the weaker side, but a few strong cards can sneak their way through there. For this expansion, the two major players I can identify are Sunreaver Spy and Safeguard. The first one many have identified as Totem Golem for Secret Paladin, which is pretty much the case. That only gets it a strong in the right deck, however. While it helps out Secret Paladin a lot, it's not quite powerful enough for a higher rating. Still, the secret support Paladin is getting helped this get highlighted. Changing gears over to Safeguard, this card looks like a more expensive Rotten Apple Bomb. But since it doesn't rely on healing, it has a better worst-case scenario. That plus potential mech and death rattle synergies give this very good odds for the meta as well. It's worth noting that many of the neutral cards have the rating strong in the right deck. Some of these cards may see play, while others may not. For example, Potion Vendor is technically better than Fungal Enchanter in regards to healing, since it's easier to put onto the field. But with wide boards being aggressively focused and healing not being, it's unlikely this power will be fully exploited. Maybe a Heal Zulok will come about again, but since we don't have Happy Ghoul this time around, I kinda doubt it. At least, not yet. With this in mind, a few more curiosities include Arcane Watcher, Dalaran Librarian, Toxfin, Sunreaver Warmage, and Batterhead. All of these cards have a strong in the right deck rating, and a maybe for meta potential. Their weakness, to use that term loosely, is that they only work in certain decks that may see play or may not. We'll just have to see. Now, let's move on to unusual cards that probably won't work. Let's start with a particular pair that I call the Portal Demons. These cards are quite similar to Valdore Strider. However, a 4/4 Spider is much better than a 2/2 with Rush. The Spider would be an overpowered 3-drop, while the Demon would be an average 2-drop. This means that the power of the Portal Demons is more dependent on the base minion that comes down, rather than the demon shuffled into the deck. To that end, a 4-mana 5/2 is pathetic and would get a Mostest Stupidest. The Portals push that up to a sadly lacking, won't see play. Alternatively, the Portal Overfiend is too expensive to viably work. Better stats though, so this gets a fun for the arena. There's one more below average card to examine, Flight Master. At first, this card seems pretty balanced, 3 mana 3/4 and a Griffin for each player. However, there's one small problem with this. The opponent gets tempo on their Griffin before you get it on yours. Therefore, the battle cry benefits them more. To put it another way, this card would be perfectly balanced if the Griffins had Rush. But they don't, so it isn't. This card wouldn't have seen play either way, but as it stands it gets a sadly lacking instead of a higher rating. With those out of the way, there are two more cards in the neutrals that are exceptional, Magic Carpet and Whirlwind Tempest. Starting with the Carpet, this card is a little more challenging to use properly, requiring deck construction and a proper hand. But the amount of rushing minions that come out is interesting, so I gave it a decent if decent. It probably won't see play in the meta though. Whirlwind Tempest, meanwhile, is quite unique. Wind Fury already takes the tempo of a card and doubles it. Usually this isn't an issue, because Wind Fury minions are often fragile or expensive. However, Mega Fury takes that already doubled stat and doubles it again. Some may say that the 8 mana cost is clunky, but Shaman can use this with their 2 mana Wind Fury spell to just give a random minion on their field quadruple the damage. I sincerely considered making a new rating for this card, and moving Mechadun and Hakar into that new rating. If I did that, it would have read something like, if your opponent plays this, you're already dead. But I don't want to be too confusing, so I gave this a decent if decent instead. You could argue stupid unless not, but I wanted to make sure this one stood out even though I don't think it'll see play. Now, let's move on to class cards. Class cards are often more powerful than neutral cards, and rankings like pretty good and strong in the right deck can often be given to tools that won't even see play. That said, looking generally at all the rankings, certain classes like Warlock clearly seem to be in a worse place than, for example, Rogue. That doesn't necessarily mean Warlock will fare worse than Rogue in the upcoming meta, but it will be a trend in the data. Let's look at some of the weirder class cards we've gotten, starting with Rapid Fire. Once again, we've been graced with a low-cost twin spell card, so to judge this, I'll do a direct compare-contrast with Firefly. The non-twin spell version of this card is identical to Moonfire, a card that only sees play in Miracle and Malagos decks. Firefly, meanwhile, is not identical to Wisp, it is in fact slightly stronger than Wisp. So if Firefly is a good card by being just a bit stronger than Wisp, how good is Rapid Fire when it's not at all stronger than Moonfire? The answer, as strong as Moonfire, which is to say perfectly balanced, which is to say fun for the arena. This is, naturally, by Blizzard's design. This card is meant to synergize with Varisa Windrunner and Zul'jin. Unfortunately, the amount of power these cards have isn't quite large enough to justify using this, but I could be wrong. Plot Twist is another weird card, being new design space for the game. With cards like Portal Demons and Betrug, the idea of cycling through your deck seems somewhat interesting. The problem is that many of the cards involved in this plan are terrible, and the lamest control deck would have little difficulty keeping this deck at bay. And when that plan doesn't work, what's left for this card? Well, absolutely nothing. It provides no benefits other than replacing any cards in the player's hand that they can't use, which isn't enough of a benefit to spend 2 whole mana. Come on, Blizzard, what game do you think this is? Auto chess? I almost gave this card a most is stupidest, but the truth is that the cast when drawn effect is still a relatively young one. This may yet surprise us, but until then, it only gets a slightly higher ranking of almost alright, and it will definitely not see play in this meta. The last weird card we'll be talking about is Sweeping Strikes. The phrase damages minions next to whomever it attacks is one that historically hasn't done well. This is because when a minion is played with that effect, they are often understated, which makes them easier to kill on a bargain. This card avoids that by being placed on a minion instead, meaning the benefit of clearing isn't tied to low stats. Additionally, we have 2 very important keywords that have been added to the game that help this mechanic: Lifesteal and Rush. Lifesteal ups the benefit of getting the minion to attack, while Rush makes it easier to attack. Both of those synergize well with this phrase. Altogether, this makes the spell strong in the right deck, but I considered upping that as high as deck defining. For now though, it got this rating, and a maybe for the meta. We're now down to our final points, namely, what are the strongest and weakest cards of the set? In this case, most of the legendaries are pretty balanced. Even the poorest ones have their uses, while the strongest ones have their weaknesses. Oblivitron has synergies up the wazoo, while Scargill requires card draw that Murlocs typically don't have. Penniless, what about Underbelly Angular? I said typically! That card's also crazy strong. Anyways, only one legendary qualifies for Crafted Golden, Madame Lazul, and even that I have my doubts on. This card isn't quite as strong as I first argued it was, but I sincerely believe the knowledge factor is significant for this card, so while it might deserve a lower ranking, I'm keeping it at the top. And now, only one remaining card has earned a Crafted Golden. Ladies and gentlemen, feast your eyes on Convincing Infiltrator. Watch as he convinces you that he's harmless, when in reality he's an overpowered taunt minion exclusive to Priest. The power behind this card should be incredibly self-evident. An effect originally valued at approximately 3 or 4 mana was dropped to 2 mana during Boomsday, and that card saw play in a major deck. Then Blizzard decided, hey, you know that effect that's strong when we value it at 2 mana? Let's change that to 1 mana! It's absurd and strong, and every Priest deck will likely run 2 copies of it. Even Clone Priest? Especially Clone Priest. Well, that's about it. Just 2 final notes. Number 1, I'll be live streaming for a few hours when the expansion launches tomorrow. That doesn't have anything to do with card reviews, I just thought some of you would like to know. And number 2, Dr. Boom's scheme has received no other friends to join it in the mostest stupidest ranking. As sad as it might be to say, this is the only unequivocally bad card in the Rise of Shadows set.